Right, good day. I'm Dr. Lynn Biggs. I'm the Deputy Dean of the Faculty of Law. I'd want to talk to you about my experience as a COVID sufferer's spouse, if I can. My husband became ill on about the 5th of June. He had normal signs of flu-like symptoms, and being a chronic asthmatic, it did play on my mind that he could be COVID positive. The really scary telltale sign for me and for my kids was the fact that he actually just couldn't get out of his bed. He went to lie down on a Friday evening saying he's going to put his feet up for a while, and the next time he could actually get enough energy to move was on the Sunday. By the Monday morning, he was still really very ill, and so he went to the doctor on the Monday, and the doctors diagnosed him with chronic or severe bronchitis, gave him the antibiotics and the normal medication that is ordinarily administered. But by the Thursday, he was incredibly ill. And by that time, I had also started with symptoms and was also myself on antibiotics and cortisone, the normal flu medication. But on the Thursday, we went for COVID testing, which was quite an experience, and it was almost surreal in a way, because we sat in a drive-through queue for an hour and a half, and being dealt with people wearing hazmat suits and all the protective equipment was quite it was very surreal and quite scary in a way. It had never really crossed our minds that he could be COVID positive, but I did at the back of my mind keep on thinking that he could have been COVID positive. By the Friday morning, so he had been sick for a week and he had shown no improvement on any of the medication. And the Friday morning, I contacted the doctor and I said to our phone, I said, he's really not well. So they decided to book a bed at Green Acres Hospital, and he was admitted to hospital. We hadn't received the COVID test result yet. So he was admitted, and at about 10:30 in the morning, thankfully he had, his cell phone and his iPad and all those kind of devices with him, but I couldn't go in with him. I stood in the screening queue with him for probably about 45 minutes before he could get into the hospital. And there's this dreadfully ill man standing in a queue for 45 minutes before he could gain entry to the hospital. It was quite concerning. And then he went into the hospital, and I couldn't, attend to any of his needs. I couldn't assist him in any way. He was placed in a PUI ward, which is a people under investigation ward, where they basically wait until they receive the COVID testing results. They had known that he had gone for a COVID test. He advised them of that, and they waited until he received the COVID testing result. We only received the result at about 6 that evening, on the Friday evening, and they then moved him into the COVID ward. That phone call that I received from him to say that he was COVID positive was actually quite scary, because of all the social media hype and all the news and all the stories that we've seen across the world, and particularly in Italy and in Europe, and the hospitals and the state of the patients that, going into hospital was almost, it's 50-50. You don't actually know if you're going to be strong enough to survive this terrible virus. So he really only started getting any form of treatment once he was moved into the COVID ward, which was quite scary, because by that stage I could hear that his breathing was really bad. But of course, being a mom, I had to always just be strong for my kids. I've got two teenage kids. My daughter is 17 and my son is 15. And of course, they were terribly worried about their father. So the big concern for me was actually that first night. I kept in contact with him, and then of course it was time for us to all go to sleep and try and sleep, knowing that he's now in a hospital and we don't really know what the conditions are or what his treatment is. And when I woke up on the Saturday morning, I actually watched my phone, and I went onto his WhatsApp account and waited to see when, I could see that he was last online at about 9:30 that night. And I literally lay there watching his WhatsApp status to see if it would change, because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if he didn't go online, I knew that he was either in ICU and on a ventilator, and all his devices had been taken away so that they could treat him properly, or he could have been dead. So I lay there watching his WhatsApp status for a couple of hours, because he only went online. I woke up quite early, and I think he only went online and when he woke up at about 9 o'clock in the morning. He had a really bad night the first night and was being nebulized regularly and on oxygen and hardly slept. So when he did fall asleep, they let him sleep until about 9. You know, it was very scary and very concerning. And, you know, my daughter is a very emotional child, and she expresses her feelings, which is good for her. So she dealt with it and was very emotional and very concerned about her dad. But my son really became quite quiet and quite withdrawn, which was really concerning. So I needed to be there for my kids. His results, you know, his progress was very slow. His oxygen saturation levels were really bad. So they were constantly monitoring him. He was on oxygen all the time. And he was being informed that if his oxygen saturation levels dropped by 1 point, he was going to go onto a ventilator and into ICU. And I know that those are where all the horror stories are, is that whole, if you go onto a ventilator or if you go into ICU, the chances are not really that great of actually surviving. But he pulled through and he started getting better slowly but surely. It was a very, very, very slow process. And, you know, the conditions in the hospitals, we truly are most grateful to all the frontline health workers, the conditions that they face every single day, the circumstances that they have to deal with their colleagues and fellow medical staff being, you know, positive, getting tested. His own doctor was tested positive and he had to get a new physician. We are most grateful to the way in which they helped my husband and the way in which they dealt with the whole situation under such dire circumstances. He spent 8 days in hospital. And I mean, the support from family and friends was just absolutely phenomenal. On the other hand, it's quite an important message, I think, for all is the stigma that is attached to this virus. You know, I was very concerned, particularly about my kids and how they would be treated. Obviously, I was in contact with their teachers, the headmistresses, the headmaster of the various schools. And immediately we could pick up a sense from other kids that they were reluctant to actually even, like, you know, they were all concerned that they had been in contact with my kids and that they were concerned that they themselves would then get it because they happened to be in contact with my kids. And that stigma also didn't only, you know, it's not only with children, it's also with adults. I mean, it's quite strange how some people responded. I mean, some people were amazing and the most supportive and encouraging, and I had people doing shopping and you name it. And other people immediately were concerned for themselves. And I think it's a very important lesson, is that we do actually need to be concerned about ourselves, and particularly those that have underlying issues or those that are of an age where it is a concern, the over 60s, you know, and we do need to be aware of the fact that this virus is very real. It chooses anyone. We cannot think of how my husband actually got the virus because he never came into contact with anyone that he knew that was positive. So it could be merely touching something, you know, having touched his face or whatever. So it's a very concerning process to go through. You second guess, you double check yourself, you constantly ensuring that your kids are sanitized and that everything is spotless. And then there was time for my kids to go back to school. And we kept in contact, and the schools were, you know, like, no, it's not necessary for them to be tested, you know, as long as they isolate for the required period. And both my kids then insisted that they actually be tested so that they could put a stop to all the rumors and to the stigma that had been attached to them, because they were starting to feel it. So we went for testing. myself, my two kids, and my domestic that lives with us. And the four of us went for testing. Lo and behold, I came back as positive. But my kids and my domestic weren't positive. They were negative. So it was quite a difficult time, because I knew exactly when I started showing symptoms of the virus. And by the time I was tested, I was probably already 10 days into the virus. So the advice that I received from the doctors, it was to remain in isolation for a further 14 days. And I'd already been in isolation for a good number of days from the day that my husband went into hospital. So it was a very difficult situation, so we actually went into isolation for a very long period of time, just to ensure that it was complete, that we were completely COVID free in our household. And also the concerns that there's no clear-cut message from the medical fraternity regarding my husband and whether or not he could actually get the virus again. So we were very, very reluctant to actually go into the COVID-infected world once we were allowed to leave our safe haven that we'd been in isolation for 4 weeks, with people leaving groceries at our door. So it was very, very surreal. But I think most people have now realized that we are actually COVID-free. And the concern that we have when we come into contact with others is not that we can pass the virus on to other people, but that we could get the virus from them. And we're more concerned about protecting my husband. My husband is still ill, not in the sense that he's physically ill, but he's incredibly weak. He lost 7 kilograms when he was in hospital. He cannot see the day through. He started going back to work last week, but he can't manage work every day. He wakes up in the morning, but even before lunchtime, by 12 o'clock, he is physically exhausted. He is completely fatigued, and he comes home and he literally sleeps until dinner. And he was discharged from hospital on the 18th of June, and we're almost a month later, and he's still suffering from the after effects of the virus. So it's very concerning. Everybody thinks that he's fine and he's pulled through and that he's absolutely okay. But it's still very concerning for us because he is weak. He is battling with severe fatigue. And strangely enough, balance. He's incredibly clumsy. So we're very, very nervous about him being infected again. And particularly with his lungs are compromised because of the virus, and because he's a chronic asthmatic, and because he also had pneumonia not so long ago. So it's a very real situation for us. But he is on the mend. I've just said to him, one day at a time. You've got to take it slowly and don't push yourself too hard, So he is improving little bits, small little steps every day, but we'll get there. The kids are back at school, and there's been no signs of any kind of stigma or them being ostracized in any way. People have been very welcoming and very supportive of them. So yes, the virus is very, very real. And actually, I'm not sure if people have seen, but my husband actually was contacted by a reporter, and they made a video of him and his experience. And I think that video has actually gone viral. I mean, it's been viewed I don't know how many times on YouTube, and it's been shared across Facebook. And surprisingly enough, the video actually made it into a life orientation classroom at one of the schools in PE. One of our friends contacted us and said, he sat down in class, and lo and behold, there was a video in part of the schooling curriculum for their school. So I think the message out there is that you can overcome it, but you need to be very, very aware of your hygiene, your health. If you've got any underlying comorbidities, to take extra precautions. Sanitize. Wear your mask at all times, and just be safe. We don't know where he picked it up. And I think it's actually changed our lives forever, because we're now looking at things completely differently. Life is too short. We've got to make the most of the situations that we have. It's in your hands.